My name is Tessa Rowan. I'm 34 years old. And for 6 years, I believed I had already buried my family without attending a funeral. I didn't block them in anger. I didn't send dramatic goodbye messages. I simply stopped reaching for people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. By the time I moved from Missouri to a quiet neighborhood outside Asheville, North Carolina, my phone had become just another tool for work instead of a source of anxiety. I had built a peaceful life as a physical therapist, helping injured veterans learn to trust their bodies again. My mornings started with mountain air, coffee on my porch, and patients who thanked me for showing up. Strangers appreciated me more than my own family ever had. Then one Wednesday afternoon, while I was finishing paperwork after seeing my last patient, my phone buzzed once, then twice, then 10 times without stopping. I stared at the screen as call after call flooded in. My older brother, my mother, my aunt, cousins I hadn't spoken to since I was 28, unknown numbers from my hometown. 81 missed calls appeared in less than an hour. My stomach tightened, but the calls weren't what frightened me. What scared me was realizing that people who had forgotten my birthday 6 years in a row suddenly remembered my number all at once. Families don't wake up together after 6 years of silence, unless something has shattered the story they've been telling themselves. I ignored every call, but one notification caught my eye. It wasn't a voicemail. It was a single text from my younger cousin that simply said, "Tessa, they know now." I read those 3 words over and over because I had no idea what they had just discovered, or why it had taken them 6 years to finally come looking for me. I sat there for nearly 5 minutes without touching the phone. 6 years teaches you that silence can become a kind of home, and I had worked too hard to build mine. My husband Evan walked into my office carrying 2 takeout coffees, stopped when he saw my face, and quietly asked, "Who keeps calling?" I turned the screen toward him. 81 missed calls. He didn't ask if I was going to answer, because he already knew what my family had been to me. He knew they hadn't called when I worked double shifts to pay for graduate school. They hadn't called when I spent 3 weeks in the hospital after a drunk driver shattered my leg and nearly ended my career before it truly began. I certainly hadn't called when we got married in a small ceremony with only 8 guests, because there was no family left willing to stand beside me. Whatever had happened now wasn't love suddenly finding its way back. Love doesn't disappear for 6 years and return in under an hour. I finally opened my cousin's message again. "Tessa, they know now." Nothing else. No explanation. Just those 3 words hanging over me like a storm cloud. Before I could decide whether to reply, another text arrived from an unfamiliar number. It contained only a link to an online newspaper from my hometown. I hesitated before opening it. Every instinct told me to delete it and protect the quiet life I had fought so hard to build. But curiosity has a way of reaching places fear never can. The article wasn't about my family. It was about me. A local journalist had written a feature after our rehabilitation clinic received a national award for helping disabled veterans return to independent living. There was my photograph, smiling beside a patient who had just completed his first marathon after losing a leg overseas. The article mentioned my name, my profession, my clinic, and one sentence that made my chest tighten. It described me as the founder of a nonprofit program that had expanded across 3 states with millions of dollars in charitable funding. I suddenly understood why 81 missed calls had arrived in a single afternoon. My family hadn't spent 6 years wondering whether I was alive. They had spent 6 years believing I was a failure. That newspaper article had destroyed the lie they had comfortably lived with. And whatever they truly wanted from me had only just begun. The article stayed open on my screen while my phone continued vibrating across the desk, like it was trying to escape. Every few seconds another call arrived. My mother, my brother, Caleb, my uncle. Numbers I no longer recognized. I muted the phone, but the silence in the room suddenly felt heavier than the noise. Evan sat across from me without saying a word. He had learned long ago that the worst memories don't always arrive shouting. Sometimes they arrive politely, wearing familiar names. To understand why I refused to answer, you have to understand the house I grew up in. I wasn't the favorite child. I wasn't the difficult one either. I was simply the dependable one. If the electric bill was overdue, I found extra shifts after school. When my father lost his construction job, I postponed my own college plans to help cover the mortgage. When Caleb wrecked his truck at 22, everyone expected me to loan him money because I was responsible. Every family has a role they quietly assign you. Mine decided I was the one who fixed problems they created. The strange part is that I believed it for years. Being needed felt so much like being loved that I never realized they were two completely different things. Everything changed the afternoon I finally said no. 6 years earlier, my grandmother had left me a small piece of land outside our hometown. It wasn't worth millions, but it was enough to secure a loan so I could open my first rehabilitation clinic. Before I signed the paperwork, my family gathered around the kitchen table with another plan. They wanted me to use the property as collateral for Caleb's failing business instead. They called it a temporary sacrifice. I called it giving away the only future that had ever belonged to me. For the first time in my life, I refused. No shouting, no dramatic speech. I simply stood up, picked up my keys, and walked out the front door. By the end of that week, relatives were telling everyone I had abandoned the family for money. They never mentioned the years I had carried them. That version of me was inconvenient. My phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't another call. It was a voicemail notification from my mother. I almost deleted it without listening. Almost. But something told me that whatever had pushed 81, people suddenly remember my existence wasn't over yet. I pressed play, and the first sentence out of her mouth made every unanswered question far more dangerous than I had imagined. I pressed play and held the phone away from my ear as if distance could soften the words. My mother's voice sounded older than I remembered, but the pattern hadn't changed. She didn't ask how I had been. She didn't apologize for 6 years of silence. She simply said, "Tessa, your brother is in serious trouble. We need you to come home. You're the only one who can fix this." There it was. The same sentence wrapped in different words. Not "we miss you," not "we were wrong," just another emergency with my name attached to it. A minute later, another voicemail arrived, this time from my aunt. Then my uncle. Every message carried the same rhythm. "Please call. It's urgent. Family takes care of family." Not one of them explained what had actually happened. They expected me to board a plane first and ask questions later, just like I always had before I walked away. Evan looked at me carefully and asked, "Do you want to know the truth? Or do you want your old life back?" I already knew the answer. The old version of me would have packed a suitcase before the first voicemail ended. The woman I had become during those 6 quiet years needed facts before feelings. I called only one person, my cousin, Mia, the one who had sent the message. She answered before the first ring finished, breathing hard like she'd been waiting beside the phone all day. "Tessa," she whispered. "They finally found Grandma's attorney." My heart stopped. Grandma's attorney had disappeared shortly after her funeral, and everyone assumed her estate had already been settled. Mia continued, "He found the original documents this week. Your grandmother never left that land to Caleb. She left everything to you. The land, the investment accounts, the lake cabin, all of it. She wrote a letter explaining why, and the lawyer is reading it tomorrow morning." The whole family found out this afternoon. Suddenly, every missed call made perfect sense. They hadn't remembered they had a daughter. They had remembered they had an inheritance standing 2 states away. I looked at the 81 missed calls one last time before locking my phone. For 6 years, they believed I had nothing worth chasing. Tomorrow, they were going to discover something even more valuable than Grandma's estate. They were going to discover that the girl who used to rescue everyone no longer existed.